Real estate changes across the country are happening and they're causing a lot of misinformation to be spread. So let's talk about what those changes actually are. Welcome to my Denver View. I'm Amy Cesario. I've been a real estate agent in Denver, Colorado for the past 25 years. And today we're talking about some significant changes coming to real estate across the country beginning August 17th, 2024. These changes are going to impact you, a real estate buyer, a real estate seller, and realtors across the country. And I want to make sure that you are all up to speed. So the big day is August 17th. That's the day that realtors across the nation will start using their new forms. Here in Colorado, we're very fortunate. We've been using the forms similar to what everyone else is now going to have to implement. We will see some changes to our forms, and they are minor. First, let's talk about the big day, August 17th. That's when every realtor across the nation will start using the new forms, most specifically the buyer agency forms. Not everyone in the United States have been using buyer agency agreements. Here in Colorado, we have been using buyer agency agreements for as long as I've been a realtor. But even in Colorado, our forms will change slightly. Along with every state needing to have a buyer agency agreement, these forms must now be signed before you are shown any property. So as a consumer, you will be expected to sign a buyer agency agreement before stepping foot into someone else's home. But again, remember, we've been using forms like this in Colorado. So if you have purchased a home in Denver or in Colorado, chances are you've already signed something like this. In Colorado, our forms have covered many topics, but the three main topics are how your agent represents you as the buyer, sets expectations of how we tour homes, and of course, how the buyer agent is compensated. These forms were designed for you, for transparency, clarity, and for your protection. So for those of you who have purchased a home in Denver or in Colorado, this form will feel very familiar. But I'm sure you will see things online from other agents across the country who haven't used these forms, or maybe the consumers haven't seen these forms before. So change is scary, especially when you're buying something as important as your next home. Okay, so there's been a lot of information being passed around over the past few months that isn't necessarily true. Some of the media outlets have even spoken untruths, not really knowing what's happening. So let's set the record straight. These forms are not designed to make things more complicated. They're designed to make things more transparent for the consumer, you. Part of the misconception is how agents are paid. And the media has spun this mostly out of slight ignorance, but for bait clicks. So let's just be real. I've heard some of the media say that buyer's agents will be working for free. And we all know that none of us would work for free. And you, as a consumer, wouldn't want an agent to work for you for free. So in all of these forms, whether you're in Colorado or another state, the form should and will be clear about how your buyer's agent is paid or how the seller's agent is paid, how much you are paying that buyer's agent or how much the seller is paying that buyer's agent. And then let's add one more layer into this, and this is what makes the agents nervous, is that the Department of Justice said that we can't advertise on the MLS what a seller's agent or the seller would be willing to pay a buyer's agent. In the past, when that listing agent or the seller's agent would put a dollar amount or a percentage into the MLS, the buyer's agent then knew what the compensation was and would tell the buyers what that percentage was. The complication is that they have decided to take that out. So when a buyer's agent is showing a property, we may or may not know how much a seller is willing to pay the buyer's agent, or if the buyer is then going to have to pay the buyer's agent. And when I say that the buyer was going to have to pay the buyer's agent, I mean, let's get real. The buyers are paying The real estate agents, when they purchase the home, so all along, has the seller been paying the listing agent and the buyer's agent, or has the buyer been paying the listing agent and the buyer's agent when they decide to purchase the property? Chicken, egg, you decide. We can talk about that a little more in depth in another episode, but let's get back to the forms. Most, but not all of the forms will be changed. So let's talk about the 3 forms that are used the most that you as a buyer or a seller will definitely need to sign. And number 1, whether you're a buyer or a seller, you will need to sign a form. This is not a contract, but it's a form, and it's the definitions of working relationships. And you want to understand this definition of working relationships because that clearly defines how your agent works for you. Are they a buyer's agent? Are they a transaction broker? Are you a customer, or are you a client? The second one is if you are a buyer, this is called the exclusive right to buy listing contract. This is a contract that you will need to sign between you, the agent, and the agent's brokerage firm. This contract sets the expectations for you, the buyer, so you know exactly how your agent is working for you, what their limitations are, what their fiduciary duty is to you, how your buyer's agent will get paid, and how you work together. The third form is the exclusive right to sell listing contract. That contract is between the seller and the seller's agent. And this form is very similar to the buyer agency agreement, but is the seller agency agreement. So the seller and the seller agent work together. A seller's agent a lot of times is called a listing agent. This agreement clearly sets the expectations for the sellers and the agent so they know how they work together, how the agent represents the seller. People will access the seller's property, how the property will be listed and marketed for sale, what the price is, what financial terms the seller will agree to from the buyer, how the property will be conveyed, what the settlement costs are, and of course, how the listing agent and the buyer's agent will be compensated. These forms might seem complicated at first, but we've been using them for years in Colorado, and we have seen firsthand, once everybody understands the agreements, it makes the transactions smoother. So as the buyer, across the country, the date is August 17th. If you're in Colorado, the date for us is actually August 15th. We will start requiring that the definitions of working relationships are signed prior to entering a home and the buyer agency agreement signed prior to entering a home. And as usual, if you are a seller, you also have to sign the definitions of relationships and the exclusive right to sell listing agreement. I feel so lucky being a realtor in Colorado. We've been using these forms for as long as I've been an agent. Changes are minimal, and the changes I think that they made, I have previewed them, are great for the consumer and for the agent alike. I think it's especially important. This may be the biggest expense of your lifetime. You need to understand clearly not only how your agent is getting paid, but how the relationship works, how the transaction happens. If you don't get caught up in the drama, these forms and contracts are made to make things more transparent for you, the consumer. So if you have any other questions or comments, be sure to comment below, or of course, you can get a hold of me by my phone or my email. There are lots of opportunities out there. Don't let misinformation scare you from making one of the best decisions of your life. I'm Amy Cesario, your realtor in Denver, Colorado, and this is my Denver View.